r/AskReddit, what's the most intelligent thing you've witnessed an animal do? I have a Senegal parrot, and if I put a plastic bottle cap in his cage, he'll put it in his beak, scoop it full of water out of his water dish, and then sit on his perch and hold it in one claw, and sip out of it, like it's a cup of coffee. I have no idea where he learned this. I had a roommate who was really into my dog. He would regularly walk by the dog and without warning, jump at him and yell. One day said dog was lying by the front door when my roommate came home. The dog got up, walked into the kitchen, and hid to the side of the doorway. He waited for my roommate to walk in and then jumped out from behind the door and barked at him, scaring the out of my roommate. Good boy. My dog places one of her squeaky toys near a small hole between our fence and the neighbors. She then squeaks it and waits for the dog next door to approach in anticipation of retrieving the toy, just so she can bark at him and be an edit, till there are so many pets out there. My childhood kitten hurt her paw once and was limping for a week. She got spoiled a ton and granted many privileges. Her whole life after any time she wanted anything she'd hold up one paw and pretend limp. Whenever I let my dog dictate the walk, the go sniff command, where I'll let her lead and give the full extent of the leash, she will walk me to the local pet store 100% of the time. We've taught our cat to get bugs for us. She can be anywhere in the house, and if someone yells bug she comes running and takes care of it. Maybe not the most intelligent thing in the world, but it's pretty helpful. As noted here some time ago, our cat, a big Maine Coon, delivers the mail from the lettuce lot to where I'm sitting. He grabs each piece of incoming mail in his teeth and proudly delivers it. If it's heavier, he bats it with his paws until every piece arrives at my chair. If there's a piece that's just too big, he sits at my feet, looking up, and MROWs to notify me that there's something else at the door that requires human attention. When I was about 10, I was swimming at the beach in NC and got pulled out by the riptide. I was swimming mightily, but losing the battle, and was rapidly being pulled out to sea, while being simultaneously dragged further down the beach. I remember screaming for help as my arms started to fail from exhaustion, and I was struggling hard to keep my head above water. I remember seeing my mom running down the beach from one direction yelling for me, while a stranger was running from the other direction, alerted by my cries. I was panicking at this point. My mom seemed so far away that I knew she wasn't going to make it. About the time my 10-year-old brain goes and this is how you die, I hear splashing. I turn my head and there is our faithful dog, a golden retriever. Apparently she had heard me screaming earlier than the humans and had started swimming to me. I just hadn't noticed her due to the waves and my panic. I grabbed her collar and she towed me back to shore. I promptly collapsed, crying and exhausted in my mother's arms, but alive thanks to my dog 25 years later, and I've had several dogs since that old girl, but no other has been able to hold a candle to her. I had a Chihuahua/Terrier mix when I lived alone. He was a puppy when I got him and ended up not ever barking or biting, which is really weird for a Chihuahua. I often ate dinner after work while watching TV on my couch with him, and I usually fed him when I ate. He eventually started to pick up food from his bowl, hold it in his mouth, carry it to the couch, park her onto the couch, then sit down and eat his food while facing the TV with me. I'm pretty sure he didn't understand what the TV was, but he sat there and pretended to watch Netflix with me because he liked being included. Occasionally he'd look over at me to make sure I was still there, and sometimes it almost looked like he was surprised by the plot twist on our TV show, or he wanted to see if I was as shocked at the tide to go commercial as he was. When I was a child, my friend and I were rounding up sheep with our fathers and the dogs. It was a hilly area and we were pushing them down a gully into the yards. One of the dogs took off over a hill, and about 15 minutes later it met us back near the yards with 15 extra sheep that were missed. I have a Maine Coon, and we lived in a ghetto apartment in Georgia. In the summertime it gets hot. So my cat started jumping on top of the fridge, and using his back foot to kick open the top of the freezer door, jump down inside the freezer, and take cool naps. Clever little. A chimp at a zoo was clapping like the star of the show, and when we would start clapping he would dance for us. He was hyping us up. I'll use the same story I used for another unrelated question on here. While unintelligent in actions, it takes some kind of intelligence for an animal to know how to play games. I witnessed 2 crows perched up on the light post outside my house playing what I can only describe as a game of chicken. They both would jump off the light post simultaneously and free fall towards the ground and fly off at the very last second. My guess is whoever got closer to the ground won that round, but who knows. Well, on one of their attempts, one of the crows waited too long and smacked right into the ground lol. It got up and flew back to the top of the pole, but to this day it's the funniest damn thing I've ever witnessed, and it was one of those things I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it with my own 2 eyes. My basset hound and cat have become codependent when hunting. They'll approach a pile of firewood with a rat's nest in it, and the dog will bark and move around the wood to scare out the rats, while the cat hides ready to pounce. Once the rats try to escape, the cat catches them, and they each take a rat for dinner. A crow placing nuts on the street waiting for cars to run them over to eat them. Once when feeding bread to ducks, I know, this was a while back, and we know better now, a heron came up, took some bread, threw it in the water, and grabbed the fish that came up to eat the bread. Whenever my door was closed, my cat would grab the door from underneath with his paw and shake the door until it opened. Imagine hearing bang 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 coming from your door at 3 AM. My terrified self opened the door to find my cat who wanted to go outside. Clever. My Siamese cat once opened a cupboard in the kitchen and dragged a sealed bag of cat food into the lounge for me to open because I'd forgotten to feed her. I was crossing a huge frozen river in the winter. The ice was about 1.5 foot in thickness, but some areas had low density. It was my dog, myself, my friend, and my friend's dog. My friend crossed first and had one of her legs break through the less dense ice, but she made it. I then watched her dog cross very nervously and carefully in roughly the same path and not crack the ice. Then came my turn. I actually sent my dog to go first. He sniffs the ground and goes to cross, but he takes this weird scribbly path instead of going just straight. I ended up following him and noticed that the ice was the most densest there. I cross without a problem. I had a pet sun conure a little while back. Wasn't sure if it was a boy or girl, as I never got it, but I named it Charlie and generally referred to him as him. For some reason, Charlie hated women. Perfectly fine with all dudes, but would basically do the bird version of a growl anytime a girl came too close. My girlfriend of the time was desperate for Charlie to like her, and for the first year of our relationship he generally acted towards her the same way that he acted towards all women. Then one fateful day, we were sitting next to each other on the couch with Charlie on my shoulder. Charlie crawled his way down to my knee and did a little head bob and chirp that I generally associated with him being in a good mood. He then hopped onto the G/F's knee and continued his displays of contentment. Head bopping, chirping, grooming, etc. Over the course of the next hour, he would move up the GF's legs and torso and find a new perch and continue to be his jolly little self. The G/F was paralyzed with excitement that Charlie was finally coming to accept her. Eventually he made his way to her shoulder and, again, sat there being happy. The G/F is staring at me overjoyed. Then, out of nowhere, Charlie turns and bites her face as hard as he can and immediately launches himself across the room to perch on our cabinet high up. The meticulously planned tricking the G/F just to get close enough to bite her face. I'd like to think that was his thought process anyway. I saw an orangutan point at a zookeeper then proceed to say, in sign language, banana, silly orangutan. That's a zookeeper, not a banana. Yesterday I saw crows passing around a small plastic ball which they took away from a pigeon. World Cup fever is everywhere. My Jack Russell would come into the living room, see our large mutt dog in the prime laying area, calmly walk over to the door, and ask to go out. Large dog would leap up and run excitedly to the door. Jack Russell would wait for a human to head to the door and ask out again. All the while the large goofball was getting more excited. Someone would open the door, large dog would barrel out and bound around the yard before looking back at the door, where the Jack Russell would stand long enough to make eye contact with him before smugly walking over to the prime laying area and kicking her feet out behind her to relax. If the mutt came back in he would go stand by her and just look heartbroken before going somewhere else to lay. I miss that smug little girl. Goofball gets all the prime spots now. I was at my nan's house once, and she is a big admirer of wildlife. Big or small, feathered or not, She liked them all. One day she mentioned she had a regular crow visit her that she fed. He would caw if there wasn't any food in the garden and my nan would oblige him, she says. Sure, I thought, until I saw what she was chucking to him. I presumed nuts or seed, but no, slices of bread. Now the crow couldn't carry it away, and he didn't want to eat it out in the open, and in my nan's and my presence, this crow stands on one side of the slice, folds it over, and tries to fly away with it, but no, still too big. So it does the same again, so that it can actually grasp a hold of it this time, and proceeds to fly away with it all folded up. Me stood there slack-jawed at what I just saw. The birds are smarter than they appear, people.